Hi everyone, in this video we're going to learn a little bit of theory about the Traxler Counter-Gambit, one of the most aggressive ways to play the two knights defense against the knight attack variation. I thought today to show you a brilliant game by the creator of the Traxler Counter-Gambit himself, Karel Traxler, who produced this amazing game back in 1890. In this position it is black to move and to checkmate in 9 moves. You may wish to pause your video now to try and solve it if you can. Otherwise, we're going to go through this amazing game very shortly. So just before I start this game, I want to give a quick reminder to all of you. If you like what you see in this video, do consider subscribing to the channel and make sure you check out some of my other amazing chess videos. If you also like what you see, make sure you leave a like and comment below if you love the Traxler Counter-Gambit. Okay, let's have a look at this amazing game. So the first thing to mention about the Traxler Gambit is how we get to the position. So the Traxler Counter-Gambit comes out of the two knights defense, which you'll see in the Italian games. That starts after e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6 and bishop to c4. We've now entered into the Italian game, and to I guess kind of get into the main line two knights, you now play the move knight to f6. This just has a plan of now taking this pawn on e4. Now the main line does go d3 and white just continues developing, black continues developing, and it's a relatively normal game. But here white also has another option that's very popular. That is the move knight to g5. This is the knight attack variation, and notice now white has got two pieces that attack this f7 square. And it's quite tricky how black is able to defend this particular square. So the main line here is playing the move pawn to d5. Now the idea of this is after e takes on d5, black's best move here in this position is to play the move knight to a5. Now hitting this bishop, and notice that this pawn has blocked this bishop from then being able to attack this f7 square. And there's some very interesting lines in the Palermo defense. This was a line that was first analysed back in, I believe, the 17th century or even the 16th century. I think it's very, very old defense. But going back to the main line position, another way that black can play is the second most popular choice, the very pugnacious looking bishop to c5. Now this is known as the Traxler Counter-Gambit, and what black is basically saying here is, look, I don't care about my pawn on f7, I'm going to try and beat you before you can beat me. Well, there's lots of really interesting theory here, but in the game here white now plays the move knight takes here on f7. This looks like a really good move because you're attacking both the queen and the rook. Interestingly enough, the main line move here is now what's considered the main line is bishop takes on f7. And well, the idea of this is now white is just going to go up a pawn and enjoy quite a comfortable position. Here after something like king to e7, which is the grandmaster move, there's two moves that are relatively safe for white and make this gambit a little bit harmless. I think the best move, well, the most popular move is bishop to d5 here, aiming to try and swap off this knight, but it's still not plain sailing for white. Black can come up with some very interesting lines here. In particular, rook to f8. Now getting this rook onto this open file is interesting, and let's say white now castles d6 to get the bishop out to start doing some attacks along there. Here bishop takes on c6, b takes on c6, and the knight comes back to f6, bishop to g4, d3, and then queen to e8. It looks as though black is generating a bit of an attack, but white is perfectly safe after moves such as bishop to e3 and then queen to h4. You now play knight b to d2. The knight is now defended. White has nearly completed his development, and I guess you can say white has nearly solved all of his problems on the king side. He still remains a pawn up, and black's king can't castle. So in this position, I would say that white is clearly better. However, in this particular game, the move knight takes on f7 was played, and this has actually been reached on the master game database. There's been 27 games that white has played from this position, and if I go onto the Lichess database, what's also very interesting is that this position has been reached 500,000 times. And well, I can just say this, looking at the database now, it looks as though black has won the majority of his games on that Lichess database with a 56% win rate, which is very high for the black side. Now, the problem with this move compared to bishop takes on f7 is this now allows a very scary response from black, and that is the pugnacious looking bishop takes on f2. What an interesting move. Now, why is this move so scary? Well, the reason why is after something like king takes on f2, you can now jump in and cause all kinds of carnage against white with knight takes on e4, hitting the king. And well, white has to be so careful in this particular variation. I think the best line is to play the move king to g1, but it's still not plain sailing. But if he plays, like, let's say, a pretty normal looking move such as king to e1, this just ends in complete disaster. Queen to h4 check. Here after g3, you can now capture here on g3 with your knight. It doesn't matter if the pawn takes. If he does, you can take the rook now, well, this pawn was being pinned, so you can now capture the rook. And after the king moves to something like e2, the pain does not stop here. You can now throw in a check here, and well, this deflects the king away from the queen. And after something like king to d3, you can have a very strong position after queen takes on d1. So the other move that's been played in this position is the move king to f1, which, okay, it looks as though it keeps white safe in this position, but black can still throw some tactical fireworks in the direction of white by playing something like queen to e7. It looks as though he's giving up his rook after knight takes on h8. Great, white is up an entire rook here, but now d5 comes crashing in, and after e takes on d5, now the knight jumps into d4, and black's pieces are starting to surround this white king, and there's not really a great deal of squares that it can go to. In fact, at this position, it has no squares it can go to. Here c3 has been tried, but now bishop to g4 is very powerful. If he didn't play c3, this queen would have been lost. Now the queen could throw in a check here, for example, but after knight to d7, black is going to simply threaten to put his queen onto f6 to then threaten a very powerful discovered check. And it's in this position that black scores very well in this position. Once again, now looking at my database, it's showing an 86% win rate. And if I whack on my engine, it's showing -7. So this is a clearly won position for black. So in this position, white clearly wasn't interested in taking this bishop on f2 and instead plays, well, a pretty poor move. He plays, in fact, a blunder with the move king to e2. He moves his king forward in this position, which is just terrible because now it allows this knight to jump in to d4 with a check. Now here, white perhaps could have thought about maybe taking this bishop. It still leads to some interesting play, but black is definitely winning because he's lost time by not taking this bishop on that last move. Instead, white goes to himself, do you know what? I've come this far, in for a penny, in for a pound. He decides to move his king forward now to d3. Again, he might have considered going to f1 and things would have been interesting. Here in this position, black now plays another very powerful move. The move b5 is now played. This is aiming to try and deflect this bishop away. So if the bishop were to take, actually black doesn't need to think so much about getting this king hunt, although this king is ridiculously placed. He can now just capture this knight and get a very good position. He's up a knight for a pawn, and white's king looks ridiculous. So instead here, white played his bishop back to b3, but I do want to show you one more line. If the queen was to be captured, which looks like an amazing move, I'm up for queen, well, this fails to b takes on c4, and after the king takes on c4, you can just keep pushing this king out into the open with something like bishop to a6 check. Here the king would have to move either to c3 or to b4, but b4 is probably the best move. here after rook to b8 check, the king will be pushed right to the side of the board, and actually in this position you can win a queen quite simply and get your material back with the move bishop to e2. A very powerful move, as now after queen takes, you now take with your knight, and well, after d3 and castles, I would say here that black is doing really well. He's going to pick up a knight in just a moment, and well, let's face it, this white king just looks ridiculous. How has it ended up all the way over on the other side of the board? So instead, in the game, the bishop comes to b3, and now fireworks continue. Knight captures on e4. It's not check, but it's very close to being a checkmate. But this is where we have what I would consider one of the most brilliant mating attacks here. This is so pretty because now, after the knight takes here on d8, winning a queen, which just looks very, very good as a move, black in fact wins here in 9 moves. So we're going to see now this amazing checkmate in 9 here. If you want to pause this to try and solve this puzzle, you're more than welcome to, but we're going to now have a look at this mating attack. It starts now with the move knight to c5 with check. Now here there's only one legal move for the king. It has to go to c3. This is forced. Now knight comes to e2 with check. Well, the queen now captures the knight. It seems like a free knight, but this allows, by moving this knight away from d4, this now allows the bishop to take on its place in d4. And well, this king has to move yet again. It has to go to b4 now. The mating attack doesn't stop here. a4 is now played. And well, there's not much that the white can do. If he moves his king over here, this is going to lose immediately to b4. A very nice pawn checkmate. Don't worry, there's more pawn checkmates coming in just a second, because after the king captures on b5, here comes the bishop with another check on a6. A brilliant move. Again, white has got no legal moves apart from capturing here on a5. This is forced. And now, well, the black bishop could take this queen over here, but he decides, do you know what? I don't need to do that. I'm going to come to d3 instead. What an awesome move from black here. So the king now comes to b4. It's the only move. And in this position, another check is thrown in. And, well, it doesn't matter where the king goes to. It's going to end up with a checkmate here. He goes to a4 now. And here the knight comes back to b4 with a check. And after the king takes on b4, here is the very nice finish to this game. The move c5. It is checkmate. A brilliant, brilliant attack from Karel Traxler himself, showing off why he is such a brilliant player and how amazing his gambit line is. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed looking at some of the lines in the Traxler counter gambit. But in any case, if you enjoyed what you see, once again, I want to remind you, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video if you did, and share this with a friend if you want to show them this amazing game. But as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.